The day started out like any normal day. My dad has had multiple surgeries, and he's come out of them perfectly. He's a very strong man. I mean, if I could describe him in one word, it would just be strength. He's always just been very strong in our family.
Mike had had a stent earlier I think it was October prior, and it was just one stent, went fine, nothing out of ordinary. Recovery was very quick, and he knew he had to have a follow-up stent.
On my daily rounds, I was walking through the ICU, and I had seen that Mr. Harms had arrived, and Mrs. Harms and Courtney really looked like it had been a day, and they were just happy that everything had gone well, and they were sitting on the couch, and we just kind of let them know that we were expecting for this to be, just a routine stay. You come to the ICU just for observation, and we just keep our fingers crossed, and we move out in the morning. It was shortly after that the situation really changed.
That procedure portion went really well. However, it was noted he had what we call a dissection, where the artery just started ripping on itself, and essentially we had to quickly rescue him and put a bunch of stents in to try to bring him back. He did at one point essentially arrest on the table, and we were able to quickly bring him back, and thanks to the help of all the cath lab staff that were in there as well. Subsequently, Michael did pretty well. We took him to the intensive care unit and was doing well. However, shortly after, he suddenly passed out again, right in front of family.
My mom, with terror in her voice, said, "What is wrong with him?" And I turned around, and his head was rolling back. He was turning ashen gray, taking that last agonal breath. And it's kind of a blur after that. The seconds and the minutes just all rolled together. I just remember screaming. I remember pushing my mom out of the room because I didn't want her to see that. I remember screaming for the crash cart.
And they handed the phone to my sister, and I could hear her screaming and crying and yelling in the background, "You need to get here, Dad's dying."
And I went to the nurse's station with my mom, and we just cried. And we prayed, and Kelly Fry, she's the nurse manager in the ICU, and we actually went to nursing school together. So familiar face was just what I needed at the point, and she was my anchor. She held me back to reality because I just felt like my world was crashing down.
I just remember trying to, keep myself together so I could keep my mom together, so I could keep my sister together.
So I dropped the kids off at home and raced to the hospital, and I'd get there and hadn't really gotten any other updates. So for all I know, I don't really know where things were left off at. And I show up, and the family's in the waiting room with the pastor, and they're all praying. And my first thoughts are, I'm like, is he gonna die today?
Immediately after the code was called and the team was following, ACLS protocol, I got on the phone with Dr. Patel, and he was very insistent on getting the patient back down to the cath lab. And we had what is known as a Lucas device, and it's an automated CPR machine. And we were able to get that up to the ICU within a minute. And we were able to get that attached to him and in place. And we were back down in the cath lab and did not miss a single compression from getting him out of the ICU onto the elevator and back onto that cath lab table. So I knew that we were giving him the best chance of survival.
And in the cath lab, looking at the artery again, it just seemed that the artery had started to try to reclose on itself. And a gentle ballooning at the end got the artery wide open, and Michael fortunately did really well after that.
You know, I fully and firmly believe that this was something that was in God's hands, and he put exactly the right people together at the right time. Because if those nurses were not there, and if they didn't work on him as long as they chose to, he wouldn't be here.
When we were done the second time with Mr. Harm's procedure, the interaction was quite different, because when he came to us the second time, he wasn't quite as stable as we'd seen him the first time. So not only were we caring for Mr. Harms, but his family. They had a lot of concern, and so a lot of our staff kind of just tended to them to make sure that they were okay, and they knew that he was in the best hands possible, and that we were doing everything we could to make sure that they would see him again after the second procedure.
Jeremy Weber, the critical care nurse, was assigned to take care of him that night. And I made sure that I just stopped in and just to peek in on Mr. Harms before I left. And I could not believe it that here he is with his eyes open, responding to the questions, asking what was kind of going on. And I was just so proud of Jeremy to be able to offer him and Mrs. Harms that comfort in that first night. And here is a man who literally suffered a significant cardiac event and was able to look at his family in the eyes and have those moments.
I woke up Thursday morning, and other than a breathing tube, I felt fine. I wasn't nervous, I wasn't anxious, I wasn't, I just felt fine. And if it wasn't for
the staff, the doctors, the nurses, the techs, like I said, everybody was in the right place at the right time. And he had a miraculous recovery. I mean, there's no side effects. There's no detriment to what he went through.
one of the things that I'll never forget was when all the nurses came in
To ICU after everything happened. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole group. The whole group came in. You know, that just doesn't happen much. Where you get, they were all concerned. The first follow-up, I saw Carla, Dr. Patel's PA. Mm-hmm. And she told Karen and I, she goes, she started crying. Mm-hmm. And she goes, we weren't going to let you die.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I said, well, that's good.
We knew that we wanted to do something. The cath lab, the ICU, everyone that was involved.
I make blankets, but I think of them as a hug. And so I told them, I said, we're going to make some blankets.
We got together with them, and to our surprise, they had something for us as well. The cath lab had made an ornament for each of us, and in that ornament was a cardiac stent, and then it had my dad's EKG on the ornament, the before and after, what he looked like when he was coding, and then after when they removed the thrombus and he went back to a normal sinus rhythm.
Quite a few said, we're so glad that you came because we never usually see the people again. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, well, we had to thank you. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. This is very minute. As a thank you, I mean, how do you thank all of these people that gave us back my husband, a father, grandfather? So
I have a tech that's worked at the cath lab for 30 plus years. I've never seen him cry, and he cried when he got that gift because he just thought that was, I did my job that day. And while he was close and compassionate about Mr. Harms, he just didn't ever expect anything in return other than to see Mr. Harms walking down the street again one day.
And they also handed over a handmade sign that now hangs on the wall right outside of the room that Mr. Harms was in, to just give us that daily reminder of all the good things that can happen.
What more can you say than the ability? I wouldn't be here now talking to you if it wasn't for a Dr. Patel, his team, the Lucas machine, everything that they did for me,
Well, to have it this close,
they have it this close.
we were blessed. I mean, we were totally blessed. It could have been opposite of what it was.
So I tell people now I have two birthdays, October 3rd and December 19th.